We are live.
Come up here and speak for a minute. And then I'll go in the other room and see if I can hear you. So weird, this thing being backwards, isn't it?
Yes, it is so weird.
All right, just speak for a second. I'll go down the hall.
Okay. This is Zsa Zsa Hurd. We're in Rotary. Today is Wednesday.
I can hear you just fine.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have that little sound?
I hear you just
Okay,
fine. I heard you
okay.
say, this is Zsa Zsa Hurd, and I heard you say it, and then it came through a second later here.
Okay,
So
okay,
you don't
good.
have to worry about it.
Yep, we're good then. Okay.
I'm gonna turn it off so it doesn't. Yes.
Okay. Hey, Tabitha.
Okay. Hey, what's up? All right. Okay. Perfect. Everything was great.
Do you need the same thing again tomorrow morning, or do you need a mic and speaker?
Same thing will be fine because they're gonna be getting in their computers tomorrow. So, just like that. Just, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Because we're gonna set them up, someone will be speaking, put the projector on the wall, and then they'll be showing them what to do, and then they'll do it
and then do the-
hands-on as they walk through it
Okay,
together.
so, well, through training, okay.
Today is me talking, tomorrow is them doing it.
Then do it, okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
It was great. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. And tomorrow we will do lunch.
Okay.
We'll be part of the
So
buffet.
it's a full day tomorrow, is it full day today or is it full day?
So today we need to be out of here by 4. We'll be out of here by 3.
Okay.
We'll be out here plenty of time. No, it'll be, I looked at today and tomorrow as 2 3-quarter days. You know, not 2 full days. But to add up to a day and a half. It works. Yeah.
Okay, and is it a 9 o'clock start tomorrow? Okay, that's fine, just for our team.
Yep, yep, that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Goes outside and it's nice, a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, I'll text them and see what they want. Can I get you some water, tea? Nothing? Okay.
Huh? How are you?
Hey, doing good, doing good.
I can turn it around and say, get started. Very, very good. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we're doing our true training right there, right now. So,
Oh, okay. Good day.
I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah, that's right.
If you have any questions, then call.
I would. No.
You don't do anything.
Right, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'll. Yeah.
That's right.
That's what, do my best.
Yeah. You doing well?
I wrote this morning to our speaker. A video. It's almost. It covers most of what you told.
Right.
So right here back, I'll.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, she,
Well, who would be the question to let know?
you can let me or Henry know, because, you know, Henry's got a relationship with us, and so he might be able
Well,
to.
that's right, he would. Yes, sir. I'll just send it over to you.
I heard,
So,
great news.
full house.
Were you happy? I heard that.
Oh, very good. Well, sir. Yes, sir.
If I'm right, that's right, I see you. Then you go, look at that. Look forward to knowing you, but I can't hear that here, so.
It's not my.
Well, I was at there, so I'm back to you to it, but that's fine. I'll be comes on you.
Thanks, well, yeah. How you doing?
Busy?
No.
You know, maybe, I keep thinking it's been a while, but I think I might be the boss.
I went on Zoom to the, Lafayette, Richard is always so but he was saying, and this is gonna be the greatest thing, people coming to the Grammy, so.
Super excited.
So are you going to wonderful.
Absolutely.
Happens to every day.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're gonna, your next one.
Oh, Ken? What, whatever you do these days, huh? We should have had.
So, yeah,
I think there's some more of it. Oh, you may ask. George Henry. Yes.
That's the best way to get on it.
Oh, the State Department was a wide, the whole State Department.
I was just talking about, like, if there was been something that I do with kind of my career, how I got into this part.
You think there are particular questions that you want to Hey! You got a right. I'm glad you all sat here. I couldn't hear
It's a one sort of.
Okay, competition.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, he will. You know what?
He's the older brother too, so I get.
Yeah.
I have some foolish questions like. I always put it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, everybody can give me tips. It's weird.
It's for you.
Clearing.
Hi, guys.
It's
good to see you.
I know, it's weird.
It's just weird.
I wonder if they actually.
Home base is where?
Decatur.
Gatorade. Yeah.
It's home base, kind of, it's all. It's all a little bit.
Why don't we get, oh, you know, I know. I'm sick. I live with something. What you talking about now? Okay.
Give a summary of the membership. One to a 700 or.
I almost figured that out. Yes. It's amazing, I'm telling. Don't have a very important profit. I don't charge the private. Why? A why parent? Not married, we're talking. Because of how most municipalities are, chunk of the population. Growth and stability is far above most towns. It's done, it's done extremely well, an awful lot of small towns. I think a lot of them have stumbled. Small process. So the last couple of years. Yeah.
I asked him this morning. I was here, I said, August, how many people more on the boat? Just started.
Oh, no, you're right. Well.
It was halftime. Yeah.
They did the, boys, couple 2 days, moms, and then one day,
More interesting with the city council sitting around the table. Number of things. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, my senior year, I graduated from It hurt to have DHS. Whenever I get up there,
By myself,
Welcome to the Rotary Club of LaGrange. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by, I don't see, is Molly, oh, they're Molly Fulcher, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's invocation is taken from two that I found posted on the Rotary International site that I found to be particularly meaningful, so let us pray. Service happens in laughter and friendship. Service happens in quiet conviction. Service happens with firm intention. Service happens in growing kinship to all humanity and attention, to service above self. So today and every day, let us be thankful for fellowship, for our wealth of Rotary friends. Let us be thankful for benevolence that working together lends. Let us be thankful for this food as we commit to doing good. Amen.
Now to introduce our visitors and guests.
Good afternoon. Well, we have one ongoing guest who is pending membership. Please stand down. We have Tabitha Coverton, who is the Executive Director of Community Event School, and hopefully she'll be initiated.
That's right. That's right.
Welcome aboard.
It's good to see so many people here today. Thanks for being here. I think we had to get an extra table today, so that's a good problem to have. We'll take that all day long. So thanks for showing up in person today. A couple of club announcements. Well, let me do the birthdays. There's no birthdays this week. We do have a couple of anniversaries. Martha Allred on the 14th has been in the club 12 years, and Jenny Copeland on the 14th, 23 years. So congratulations to y'all. I saw Martha here. And then a couple of wedding anniversaries. Dee Horton, 12 years on the 17th. Dee Lindner, 10 years on the 18th. And Mike Wilson, 35 years on the 18th. So congratulations to y'all on those dates and 10 years. Congratulations. A couple of announcements. Just a reminder that 2 weeks from today, on October 27th, our district governor will be visiting our club. I think that's a good opportunity. You know, we've got some more people here today. Let's keep that trend going and building. Be a good opportunity to invite some of our missing members back for her visit, to have a full house for her. Please be reminded also to wear any pins that you may have earned for Rotary, any hardware that you have on that day. There will be a reception for her the night before at Pine Mountain Chalets on that Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and they do need a head count for that. So if you think you could attend that over in Pine Mountain, the Harris County Rotary Club's having a reception for her, and have invited us and the West Point Club. It's usually a pretty good event. They'll have a dinner for us, but they need a head count. So if you think you could attend on Tuesday and want to attend, just let me know. Spouses are welcome to go as well. I think we have a group going already, a few folks. So let me know today, because we need to let them know to get that catering event ready. Also, World Polio Day is October 24th. So to coincide with her visit on the 27th, we are going to make a donation to Polio Plus in her honor. So we're gonna start taking some donations if anybody wants to make donations online, Barbara. So, or we can take, cash. But you can do that online, and then the club will also make a donation in her honor. A couple of other, there will not be a board meeting next week either. We'll do that when she is here in a couple of weeks, but we're regularly scheduled. It will be on the 20th, but this month it'll be on the 27th. So anybody that was need to be there, I'll send out a reminder for that. Did have an announcement from Connie that the pre-K books and bags for our grant are in and need to be assembled. So putting books and bags for all the pre-K kids in Troup County. So they're going to meet Friday at from 1:15 to 4 at the United Way. It could be a lot sooner if there's more hands. So 1 to 4 is minimum amount of time. If we get a lot of people there, we can knock it out in get it done and packed so that then people can volunteer to go deliver and read those books.
Jason, that's on the second floor of the Bank of America.
That's right. Thank you.
What date?
This Friday. This Friday, so Bank of America's building, second floor over there. We can put you to work and make good use of your time. Also, just a quick update, I got an update from Clark, that he has moved to Florence Hand for continuing and better rehab. So, I know that he wanted everybody to know that, keep him in your thoughts and prayers, but that is good news. That sounds like progress and moving forward on that. Do have some time for some happy dollars this week? Anybody happy?
Yes, I'm very happy. Yay! Field trips are back on for the schools, and this morning we had 50 enthusiastic fifth graders from Callaway Elementary at Hills and Delta State. You may not know that the Callaway Foundation finances every fifth grader in the county to come and have an educational experience at Hills and Delta State. They have so much fun, and we just love it. They walk in and they go, "It's all real." That's what one little boy said this morning. It's wonderful, and tomorrow we'll have 50 more, and on Friday we'll have the Grange Academy and Clearview scheduled, and they're coming in. Yay, makes me very happy.
$95, our granddaughter, her name is Deborah Riley Coleman. She can spell her complete name. She can identify the letters and not just spell her name. So I'm a real happy.
I'm happy, to the tune of $26.2. My wife, Sue, successfully ran the London Marathon a week ago Sunday, and we made it over there and back with only about 5 different COVID tests, so, but very happy.
And I'm happy we had live symphonic music in town last night. It was great at First Methodist. We'll have it again November 12th. And it was so great for the first time in a year and a half to have the folks in person.
So I won't expect all of you to clap for this happy hour. But for the first time since I was 2, the Georgia Bulldogs are number 1.
I think I wanted to celebrate my experience, being an Auburn guy, but, boy, anyway. I'm happy, I got a makeup in Maine. Went up, I looked at Barbara Hennigan, but she was hidden in the woods or somewhere, I don't know where you stayed. In Booth Bay, we were walking around and this lady had on a Rotary hat. And I said, you know, I'm a Rotarian. She turned out to be the district governor of Maine. And she said, you know, there are 2 other guys I just saw around the corner here. Let me see if I can get them together. We'll call a little meeting here and you can have a makeup. So I made up for that meeting I missed last week, and I'm happy for it.
Well, thank you, Bill. That does bring up a good point. You know, if you're ever traveling, you can find, you know, there's signs when you get into town, say when the Rotary Club's meeting and where. It'd be I mean, I've done it. It's pretty cool to meet with a different Rotary Club and they'll let you get up and talk. I mean, they want to know what you do different or the same. It's pretty interesting stuff. So if you get an opportunity to do it, I think you'd agree, right? It's pretty worth it. John, you have a quick announcement?
A quick announcement, as we look around over the horizon and look at our annual golf tournament. I need a few people to step up to the plate to help us look into that a little bit more and start planning. I'm not asking anybody to devote full Saturdays or 40 hours, but I would love for some people to be involved in this so we can look at the feasibility of it and plan a little bit better so we can have an awesome golf tournament. So please see me after if you want.
Yeah, thanks, John. We put it together that, you know, maybe when we're talking about the golf tournament not doing so well, when we looked at all our other options, it was not so fast, my friend. It does okay, but it can do better. And so I think maybe we want to put our resources towards something and not reinvent the wheel, just do what we know to do and do it better. So that's what we're trying to figure out, what makes the most sense to get the best return for a fundraiser for our club. All right, with that, I'll ask Henry to come introduce our program.
I'm excited to get to introduce my brother for today's program, Daniel Jacobs-Nod. He'll be speaking about his 11 years in continuing working for the U.S. State Department. And, it's the kind of thing, this is the first time also we've seen each other in 2 years in person. He's been in Thailand working and so COVID has prevented that travel. So, him and his wife, Bea, and their 2-year-old, Augustine, are here in town for 2 weeks. And so, of course, I had to rope him into a program for Rotary. Really just so I can, when it comes to questions, I can ask a few tough ones. But I'm excited to have him here. And I just think it's kind of, I find it pretty amazing that, we both grew up in Atlanta. And, Bob Copeland is our great uncle. And so we've been together here in LaGrange a few times fishing on the Piney Woods Lake just across the street. And so now, he's the U.S. diplomat working around the world. And I kind of feel like I'm like the river diplomat on the Chattahoochee. But so I'll keep it right there. And Daniel, if you want to come up and share a few words, and then I hope y'all will have some questions for him afterwards. So.
It's an honor to be introduced by my brother. And it's also nice to be here today. It sounds like it's my Aunt Jenny's 23rd anniversary. Is that what? Yeah, 23rd anniversary of her Rotary Club membership. So that's a nice thing to celebrate. I'm also really grateful when Henry mentioned this opportunity. I was very excited because I was actually going to do a Rotary International Scholarship. Right when I graduated, I was offered a scholarship to go study in Beijing, China from the Rotary Club in Memphis. And I was gonna do that if I hadn't been, but then I was offered the State Department job. So I had to take that instead. But it was really an honor and a great opportunity. So this is kind of a small way for me to say thank you. What I plan to do today is just talk about State Department big picture, and then a little bit about my career and what I'm specifically doing in Chiang Mai, and then happy to answer any questions that you have. The State Department, 3 top priorities. First one is defending the United States, our national security. We're overseas so that our soldiers don't have to go over there. A couple years ago, General Mattis was talking to Congress, and he said, if you don't fully fund the State Department, then I need to buy more bullets. We're over there in countries where it's one of our allies, where they're strengthening our alliances. In other countries, we're improving relationships and defending our country. Number 2, it's supporting the U.S. economy. State Department, embassies, consulates, we're working to promote U.S. products. At the consulate in Chiang Mai, we regularly have, the Consul General goes out to events at malls to promote U.S. products. And we're also negotiating with governments to make sure that U.S. products can be sold, and there's, the tariffs and all the import restrictions are done fairly, so that Georgia Pecans, Callaway Golf Clubs can be on the shelves in Thailand. I was talking with one of my coworkers recently who's a big golfer, one of my Thai colleagues, and I told her that I was going to LaGrange. She was like, "Oh, Callaway, that's a good golf club." So trade, and then also inbound investment into the United States. I looked it up yesterday. Georgia has 200,000 jobs that are supported by foreign investment. And I know just down the road you'll have the Kia plant. That's another thing that the State Department is working to promote, selling foreign business people on the advantages of investing in the United States, creating jobs here. Third big thing is protecting and assisting U.S. citizens overseas. A good example of this is what the State Department was doing recently in Afghanistan. I was actually part of a task force to call U.S. citizens who are in Afghanistan and give them updates about how they could get out and also get updates on their situation so that they could receive additional assistance. I was in Chiang Mai, but this was a global task force, so they essentially asked people from all over the world to collaborate, and we were calling 24 hours a day leading up to that pullout so that Americans could have the most up-to-date information on how to stay safe and get out. That's the big picture stuff. Now I'll talk a little bit about my path to joining the State Department. After graduating from Chamblee High School, I went to Rhodes College in Memphis. I studied history there, and I also minored in Chinese studies. I studied Mandarin while I was there. And I had a lot of friends who were in the military, so I knew that when I graduated, I also wanted to serve my country. And when I heard about the State Department from, they have a program where diplomats go around and speak to universities kind of about the career, I decided to take the test. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Foreign Service test, just because I think it's a really unique opportunity that not a lot of people know about. And so if you have friends, family, or kids who are looking for a new career or a career, it's a great thing to share with them. The Foreign Service test is offered all around the country, all throughout the year. It's a multi-stage process. The first stage is just a multiple choice test. I actually took it at a community college in Memphis. You just go in, it was like a Saturday morning. I went in and took the test. It's free, there's test materials online. It's a very general knowledge test. There was questions on there about like jazz and like file formats. It's just general knowledge. It's not like diplomat stuff. And then if you pass that, there's a couple more stages. There's an essay portion. The final stage is a full-day interview that you do in DC. But it's totally based on merit and your knowledge and your experience. It's not based on who you know. When I was applying, I had people, I remember my dad was like, "You're not gonna get a job with the State Department, Daniel. We don't know anybody in DC." But that's totally false conceptions. It's a very merit-based process. And the first step is free. So I always encourage people when I'm talking to especially people, college students, I always say, hey, if you're interested, just take the test. Like, the only opportunity cost is a Saturday morning. So I'd be happy to chat more, or if you have people who you think might be interested, I can share my contact information, and I'd be happy to talk with them about it. So I joined the State Department in 2010, straight out of undergrad. There's also a lot of people who joined mid-career in my orientation class. There were people who were in their 30s and 40s and were just trying to switch to a new career. We even had, I think we had someone who was 62 who wanted to try something out before the mandatory retirement age. So it's a broad range of people who joined. My first tour was in Rangoon, Burma, and then I went to Shanghai, China. I was in both of those locations for 2 years, and then I served in DC, and now I'm at the Consulate General in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Just a quick terminology thing. Consulate General is kind of like a branch office of the embassy. You can only have one embassy in every country. It's in the capital, but the Consulate General is a branch office. So in some countries where we have really good relations, we want to open a couple offices. Thailand is one of those, and so that's why I'm at the consulate. Trade is a top priority for the consulate. There's a Frito-Lay factory in northern Thailand, so we do a lot to support them and support other U.S. companies who are there or interested in investing there. Chiang Mai is right near the Golden Triangle, where the People's Republic of China, Myanmar, Burma, Laos, and Thailand all intersect, and that's for decades now, that's been a source of a lot of narcotics trafficking. So we have a big DEA office in Chiang Mai that's working with the Thai police to fight the drug trade. That's kind of an example of how the State Department supports our security here. We're supporting DEA so that they can take the fight to the drug traffickers, so the drugs never even arrive to the United States. And then our top priority in Chiang Mai is assisting U.S. citizens. And I'm the head of the consular section, and that's the office that's specifically responsible for that. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing there. Northern Thailand has about 17,000 U.S. citizens who live there. That was our estimate right before COVID. So that's, I think LaGrange is like 30,000. It's about half the population of LaGrange. It's spread all over northern Thailand. It's a really diverse population. There's been missionaries in northern Thailand since the mid-1800s. So there's some missionary families that are still there. There's also a lot of missionaries who use it as kind of a logistical hub for operations in other countries. There's a lot of retirees. Chiang Mai is a great place to retire, cheap cost of living, interesting culture and good climate. Also a lot of English teachers and a lot of digital nomads. This is a term that I didn't learn until recently, but it's kind of like people who do all their work online and they just want to go somewhere nice and do it from there. So Chiang Mai is one of the digital nomad capitals of the world, according to Google. We're helping all these people with routine services, issuing passports. If an American is born overseas, we'll issue them a birth certificate, but also with emergency services. One example of that is recently, I guess, when COVID first started, there was just a huge demand for information, accurate, up-to-date information so that Americans can make decisions to stay safe. The Thai government was focused on their citizens. A lot of the messaging that they were pushing out was in Thai, so we were liaising with the Thai government so to get information about provincial travel restrictions, information about quarantine requirements, all of these things, and then share that with our Americans. I actually spoke to the Rotary Club. I think that was last year. I spoke to the Chiang Mai Rotary Club about the COVID situation, what the consulate was doing, our advice for U.S. citizens. So that we're doing a lot of crisis messaging over the last 2 years. When I was in Burma, there was a plane crash. I happened to be near the airport, and there was 4 U.S. citizens on board. And so I went to the airport to assist them. My spouse, who's also a foreign service officer, we were actually both on vacation. It was Christmas Day in 2013. And we just happened to be going to the airport when we heard that a plane had crashed there. So we went, assisted the Americans. There was one individual who had been badly burned. So we arranged his medical evacuation to Singapore for medical care. So that's kind of like an example of crisis response. If U.S. citizens die overseas, then the consular section is responsible for notifying their family, repatriating their remains, and assisting with their estate. In Chiang Mai, we have about 90 U.S. citizens who die every year. A lot of those are just natural causes, but also some people who die of car accidents, other tragic situations. And if they don't have any family in Thailand, then it's my job to locate their family in the U.S. and call them, inform them that their family members passed away, and then assist them with the next steps with dealing with the Thai authorities so that they can get their family member's body home. If a U.S. citizen runs out of money overseas, they can get a loan from the U.S. government to return to the U.S. Last year, there was a 98-year-old American who lived in Chiang Mai for a long time. He was actually a D-Day veteran. World War II veteran, D-Day landing, and he wanted to return to Baltimore to be closer to family and to be at a VA hospital, but he didn't have the money to pay for a very expensive medical evacuation. So he got a loan from the U.S. government, and we coordinated that evacuation for him. Another example of the kind of emergency services we provide is if a U.S. citizen is arrested overseas, then the consular section is responsible for visiting them in prison and making sure that they're being treated fairly according to that country's law, and they're not being treated differently because they're a U.S. citizen. So I regularly visit U.S. citizens who are in prison or jail in northern Thailand. Besides being treated fairly, we're also assisting them with communicating with their family and those kind of details. So that's kind of a quick summary. I like to think this is me explaining kind of what we're doing with your taxpayer dollars in the consular section. Outside of the consular section, that's one part of the consulate, but we have in Chiang Mai, we have DEA, we have an Air Force detachment that does seismic monitoring to detect both earthquakes and nuclear testing. My wife is in charge of the political econ public diplomacy section, so that's the folks who, she's gathering information about political developments in Thailand and feeding it back so that decision makers in DC can make good policies and kind of know what's going on and use that in making decisions. Besides that, those are probably the main offices of the consulate in Chiang Mai. So that's what we're doing with your taxpayer dollars out there. And I'm happy to open it up for questions. What do you got? Yes, sir.
Are there any time investments here, like in the nineties, there was like some rather large textile manufacturers around Union?
That's a good question.
Others, I haven't heard anything recently.
I know when I looked up that number, the 200,000 number, I think it was England, Canada, and Japan are the three largest investors in Georgia. I'm not familiar with any Thai investments. Thailand, I think most of the investment it's U.S. In companies operating in Thailand and selling things. I mean, the U.S. brand is pretty good in Thailand. People like American products there. But yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm sure.
Do you have any idea how long you will be in Thailand?
So I'll be there another year. Most of our assignments overseas, my first 2 assignments were 2 years. And then once you get to the mid-level, most assignments are 3, maybe maximum 4 years. But we never stay in one place for much longer than that. I can serve domestically in the US for a maximum of 6 years. But so it's kind of one of these careers where you're constantly moving every couple of years. My spouse and I are, but since we're both officers, both State Department officers, it kind of is an added complication of trying to find places where we can both work. So that keeps things interesting.
So you say you have a young daughter. Is there a school system for, the consulate or the embassy?
Yeah.
Are you just in the school system locally?
So one of the perks of working for the State Department is that they pay for you to put your kids into international school. And so most places that we would serve, there's an international school. In some really small places, it's actually the consulate or the embassy pretty much keeps the international school afloat because that's where most of the students come from. So I'd say that's the standard option. I think people you could choose to put your kids into a local school, but for the most part, people do international school. So. My son's just 2, so yeah, a couple more years, but yeah. Yes, sir.
You've got the, I guess, people like you who are State Department career employees, and then you've got the ambassadors who are more politically appointed.
Right.
What is the interface and relationship between the career folks and this political appointee? How does that work?
Right. Yeah, I think it's about, I forget the exact statistic, but I think generally it's about half of the ambassadors are political appointees, while the other half are career diplomats. So it is a mix. The logic of a presidential appointee and the value that they bring is that they are going to have a much closer connection to the president than a career diplomat. So for some of these countries where the relationship is really important, Japan, People's Republic of China, I've just served a lot in Asia, so those are the ones that come to mind. But United Kingdom, I think those are almost always a political appointee. And that's because the heads of those countries know that that person can call the president and they'll pick up the phone, which isn't the same as a career diplomat. Career diplomats bring other advantages. They know the system and they've worked in the State Department for a while. So for some, especially for maybe more niche issues, I know when I was in Burma, no, that's not actually in Burma. I was a political appointee as well. But sometimes for like more complex countries, they choose to send a career. Actually, Thailand's a good example. So the embassy in Thailand, in Bangkok, it's the largest U.S. embassy outside of any country. I think it's the largest outside. I think it might now be the largest now that they closed the embassy in Kabul. It's huge. It has tons of different agencies, and it's because it's a logistics hub for the rest of Asia and even for other regions. So you have all these U.S. government agencies who want to operate there, and so typically it's been a career ambassador because it's kind of like a management job. It's not so much about politics as it is about keeping this huge organization that is the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok running. So that's an example of maybe the attributes that a career ambassador brings to the table. At the end of the day, I we work for whoever the ambassador is, whoever the president appoints as the ambassador. All ambassadors have to receive a presidential appointment and be confirmed by the Senate. So for people working, it's kind of the same, but those are maybe the different advantages of career versus political.
What are the greatest adjustments that you've had to make in your current job compared to living in the United States?
That's an interesting question. Greatest adjustments. I don't know. I think the State Department makes it pretty easy to live overseas. You have this great support network through the consulate or the embassy. We get language training, so I had the incredible opportunity to study Burmese full time before I went to Burma. I already spoke Mandarin, so I didn't get that before going to Shanghai. But then before Thailand, I was able to. The State Department paid for me to study Thai for 10 months before going out there, so I speak Thai as well. And I think that helps a lot. I think being able to speak the language just makes that. There's always a culture shock, no matter where you go. And there's even, coming back here after 2 years away, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I got to remember some things, but the State Department really smooths that out.
Sawadika. Ken, yes, answered one of my questions there. I wondered about languages, if you're supposed to be somewhat fluent or if you have a translator available, but you're supposed to know the language is what you're saying when you go into a place for most people. And second question is, if I'm trying to present this to somebody, a young person that I think might be interested, who's about to graduate from college, say, is the salary appealing, or is it more just the sense of adventure and travel and all that?
I'd say the salary is appealing. I mean, it's appealing to me. And I was like, wow, this is a real job.
A lot of government workers is like,
the pay scale is all online, so there's no secret about how much you would make. It depends on how much prior experience you have and what your level of education is. But like starting salaries for like undergrad, who had they gave me like a year of job experience, was about 50,000 US. But there's a lot of benefits, and you obviously get like a pension. And if you serve in a harder country, then you get a differential, so higher pay. So yeah, I think it's pretty generous. And when you're overseas, the housing is paid for, and then there's international schools. So there are a lot of perks, I'd say, to the job. It is also, it's really challenging being far away from family. I'd say the last 2 years, we couldn't come back because coming into the United States was fine, but Thailand, at the beginning of COVID, they didn't let anybody into the country. And then after a while, they started requiring a 14-day quarantine in a hotel. You don't leave the room at all. We now feel comfortable doing that with a 2-year-old, but like with a 1.5-year-old, not to mention we weren't vaccinated until like last May. Whole range of factors kept us from coming back, but being away for 2 years was really tough. So there's perks, but it's difficult. And then to return to your first question, how do people here have to, are people ever in business meetings where English isn't the primary language being spoken? Is that a common experience? Okay, so you probably understand a little bit. I'd say, I speak Thai, so I can kind of track what's going on. And I also, a speech like this, that a lot of the things you've heard me say, I've said to a lot of other people. This was kind of similar to the briefing that I gave our new ambassador when he arrived in Thailand last year. But so if it's these kind of talking points that I've done over and over again, I can use Thai for that, and then have some chit chat in Thai. But most of the time, we're bringing in Thai colleagues so that if things get really complex, or if I need to make a point that has to be like exactly worded and there's no room for error, I can ask them to clarify. So it's kind of a mix. We're working with our Thai colleagues who are experts in the language, but we also have fluency to chit chat. And a lot of times, the work gets done after the meeting. This is true of everyone in all meetings. I think it all gets done after the meeting's over. And that's where the language skill is really important, because you need to be able to just go have that, one-on-one with the police commissioner or the governor or whoever. So, ma'am.
How are things now with COVID in Thailand? Are the vaccines readily available and cases down?
So Thailand was doing really good for the first year and a half. They, since they locked down the borders and they have a pretty robust public health program. US CDC actually has a huge office in Bangkok and has a really close partnership with the Thai government. And so over the last 40 or 50 years, we've really helped develop Thailand's public health sector. So they're doing really good for about a year and a half. But then this spring, the numbers started to skyrocket, and their vaccine procurement has been super slow. So yeah, vaccines are not readily available. The primary vaccines are Sinovac, and a lot of Thai people are hesitant to get that vaccine. So that's been an issue. The U.S. has donated 2.5 million Pfizer doses to Thailand. And that was a huge, I think Thai people were really positive. That really got us a lot of appreciation from the Thai people. So I think the situation is getting better, and there are more and more vaccines available, but it's been slow. They just reduced the quarantine. I think actually beginning November 1st, there won't be a quarantine requirement for entering Thailand. Their tourism sector has been tourism is about 20% of their economy. And there hasn't been any international tourists for the last 2 years. So they are really hurting, and I think they want to get tourism started back up ASAP. So.
Yes, sir. If American citizens are arrested overseas, excuse me, how do you find out?
The police are required to notify us as soon as possible. I think one of these international conventions requires it, or it's like a diplomatic custom. But yeah, police are required to notify us as soon as they arrest a U.S. citizen. It's the same here. If U.S. police arrest a foreign national, they're required to notify their embassy or consulate. But saying it's required and actually getting them to notify us are two different things. So that's a big part of our outreach. Is we're constantly meeting with Thai police to kind of explain, to diplomatically remind them, let us know as soon as possible if you arrest a U.S. citizen, and in particular, if a U.S. citizen passes away. Because if somebody dies in a tragic situation, we want to notify their family as soon as possible. And sometimes things, bureaucracies, sometimes they want to fax us the notification instead of calling us right away. So that's just you have to have those constant meetings and work those contacts.
Are we getting closer to finding out who was hurting the diplomats that were working in the Cuban embassy and what they were doing?
Yeah, that's not really, that issue is kind of out of my lane. I see it in the news sometimes, and that's about all that I'm tracking on that one.
I'm sure, I don't know why I'm curious about it. How many Americans are in prison in Thailand?
Let's see. We have two long-term prisoners in northern Thailand right now, and we have a steady flow of people who overstay, U.S. citizens who overstay their Thai visas, probably about maybe 10 to 20 a year, and so they get arrested and then deported. But we're going to visit them, and then kind of coordinating with them through the deportation process. Bangkok has a lot more. People come to Chiang Mai to do cultural stuff and go hiking and enjoy the outdoors. People go to Bangkok and places that are near Bangkok for partying, or that's one of the reasons why they go there. And so Bangkok, I don't know. I'm gonna guess they probably have 20 to 30 long-term prisoners, and then a steady flow of people who are short arrest and deportation. So a lot is the short answer.
And the second question, you're talking about the career diplomats versus the presidential appointees. In the larger, the Russians, the China, the Germany, are there career diplomats who are there all the time that support the appointee?
Oh, you mean in the U.S. State Department or in the?
No, the U.S. State Department assigned to Russia or China. Are there career diplomats who are assigned to Russia long-term or German long-term?
Good question.
Support the volunteer,
So every embassy and consulate is going to have local staff. Like in my office, it's myself and one other American, and then there's 6 Thai staff who are, they've worked there, the senior most has worked there for 20 years. So they are kind of the institutional memory, and they are an incredible asset for the US government. So they don't move around. The American Foreign Service officers like myself, we're moving around, but we're going to move around every 3 to 4 years. And yeah, so I mean, in a place, there's people kind of build up expertise over their career. Maybe you go back and serve in Russia a couple of times and you develop that expertise, but you're not there like forever. And so so like an ambassador is going to rely on both those career diplomats and the locally employed, the local staff.
As the prosecutor in the room, how strict are the criminal laws there? It ties in a little bit to Bill's question.
Yeah.
But are their laws much stricter than our laws? I know some of the countries out there, they are.
It kind of depends. I mean, deportation, they're super strict. If you overstay by like 4 days, if you overstay by like 20 or 30 days, they're gonna deport you. Well, in the U.S., you're not gonna be. They're gonna detain you and deport you. So you could probably be in detention for 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the process. So that's pretty strict. Super strict on drug laws. They sometimes impose the death penalty for people who are trafficking large amounts of drugs. Though often they end up getting a pardon. I'd say not so strict on some other laws. Yeah, I mean, some things that you would get jail time for here, you would just get a fine there. So it just kind of varies. But the key thing with arrest is that, and I think as a prosecutor, kind of appreciate this, we're not there to get them out of prison. We're there to make sure that they're being treated according to Thai law, that they understand the process. We give them a list of lawyers so they can choose a lawyer. But it's not, some people have this idea that we're kind of there to get them out of jail. You do it, the law of whatever country they're in applies to them regardless if they're US citizens, the law still applies to them. So.
What about drinking and driving laws?
Oh, that's, yeah, no, Thailand has a terrible, terrible drinking and driving problem. They're not strict at all. Its enforcement's really spotty, and culturally, it's just very accepted to drink and drive. So traffic, and yeah, the roads in Thailand, especially in rural areas, are really dangerous, and like driving after dark is extremely dangerous because of the number of drunk drivers. It's just really accepted, and they don't have. At most you'll have like maybe a checkpoint where they're checking for drunk drivers, but they don't really have patrol cars that are like out on the road. And yeah, that's the bad situation there for sure.
Do they arrest them at these checkpoints, or do they?
What's that?
Do they arrest them at the checkpoints, or do they cite them and release them?
I think some people do get detained. I guess it's a mix of both. I've heard of people who released after they pay a fine. So, yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement there. And like I said, if anybody has follow-up questions or would like to put me in contact with somebody who's interested, I can share. I don't have a lot of. I don't have business cards, but I can.
We'll put it in our bulletin. We'll make sure Clark gets it into the bulletin so everybody knows how to get in touch with me if they want to. Okay, thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it. Thank you for your service, first of all. Appreciate what you're doing there. Thank you for coming to tell us and share with us. I can speak firsthand to your diplomacy because I went to Peachtree High School, which was right next to Chamblee High School. And what'd you say you graduated? I graduated before you did, and very diplomatically, he told me that I graduated before you did. So, good job. Appreciate you being here for your talking to us today. We're going to make a donation to Polio Plus, which is Rotary's initiative to rid polio around the world. So thank you for doing that. Next week, our program also will be brought to us by Henry about investment in our forest. So if nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Put some in the $100.